to our first meeting in Kelowna. This is kind of nice to have it here. Too bad that the only day of the year that the weather's way better in Alberta than it is in Kelowna. We happen to be here, but similarly. Every time I come here, I want to kind of convince my wife that this is where we want to move to because the weather's so much better, and the wind never blows, and it never rains. So far, it's not working. Anyway, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Scott, and we'll get going and enjoy the day. Should be fun. After this, we're going to go on a little tour and see a couple of the projects here in Kelowna. And I think we have pretty well, Scott and I have been going over this for quite a while now. We have pretty well nothing but good news. Even the bad news is good news. So we'll go from there.
Go without the microphone? I'll go without, and then Don will use the microphone, so keep it simple that way. Anyway, you know, a lot of you.
I'm the Charlie Munger of this group. But
yeah, he's older, so.
I brought the appropriate
yeah. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
I have nothing more to say.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Excellent. So usual startup routine for you guys. You know, we don't mind if anybody has to leave to go to the washroom. I'm not even sure where they are in this building, but you know, don't. Yeah, there you go. Lots of pointing to the left. So you know, don't feel like you have to sit down during the whole thing. We will try to save questions till the end. We have a little bit of a presentation to go through. Nothing too extravagant. We're actually hoping to get into more of the Q&A question session with everybody. And yeah, we'll just we'll do that. And first thing we'll do is start with introductions. So you guys know Don and I. I'd like to introduce our board as well and talk a little bit about that. So just by way of introduction to the board is a board of advisors, not a board of directors. That's an important distinction for investors because they don't really have a fiduciary responsibility to investors. It's more of an advisory group for me and for Highstreet. So, you know, you can't go to them and say, fire Scott. Because
we've tried.
It won't work. And yeah, I can ignore their advice. So, you know, that's one of the caveats. Fortunately, I think it's been fantastic advice so far. And if I did ignore it, they probably might quit being an advisory group. So they're a great group. We chose them based on the fact they're all investors with us. They have great business savvy, great integrity, and I've known known a lot of them for a long time, and then met Matt last year, and he had a very kind of a different business experience, and I thought that would be a neat application for us. So by way of introduction, we'll start with Eric. If you want to stand up, Eric Morris, and. I could do an introduction, but I know you can speak very eloquently yourself. So, go ahead.
Sure. Eric Morse. I'm currently at the Abbey Business School, but met Scott way back at Victoria in my first academic appointment. I run the entrepreneurship program there, both programs for undergrads all the way through executives. This is one of 3 private boards that I'm on, I serve on, and it's been a lot of fun so far. Really getting to know the business and the team. So excited about the opportunity here. Looking forward to meeting many of you throughout the day. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Matt Phillips.
Didn't know we had to speak.
Yeah, well, it's on the spot. I figured you guys can do that. You've done this before.
My name is Matt Phillips, and I met Scott last year at a course that Eric was putting on called Quantum Shift for entrepreneurs. I know who's opposite have been through the great program here. I'll need a microphone. Last night didn't give me a projecting voice. Anyway, I'll try my best. So I met Scott through Quantum Shift last year, and
sorry, that's making it really awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can we make it more awkward? Wait, where's the beer?
Where's
yeah.
So that's maybe why I'm really on the board. So
Yeah.
But no, I've got a brewery about 15 years in now, 100 employees, and so I think that's part of our common interest is small startup-sized businesses and how those function. So it's been a great board and great challenges that he's facing and overcoming really well. So pleasure to be on it.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. And obviously that's why there's a bunch of Phillips beer there. And Matt had actually reached out and said, hey, do you guys want anything for the AGM? And well, sure, if you want to send some beer. And then in the office earlier this week, like flats and flats of beer show up with this. We had 384 beer show up at the office. I'm going like, this is like 50 people at the AGM as well. 7 each should be okay. I don't know if you guys are okay with that, but yeah. Anyway, thanks, Matt. Nigel.
Yeah, Nigel, Sarah, I am standing. I met Scott, about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. I left big corporate and went into private consulting. And one of my first gigs was with Don and Scott. A great experience, and I'm lucky enough to still participate.
Thanks, Nigel. And would all the Highstreet employees just stand up and train? I know there's some trained folks here. Just kind of show everybody here. Yeah, awesome. So I don't want to make this too long, but there's all the Highstreet and trained people. Please feel free to talk to them so everybody recognizes them when we're on the bus, when we're touring around. Please say hello. And I'd like to make sure that there's a lot of interaction there with the investors. So with that, we also have some advisors here as well. I saw Peter come in. I know Derek's here. Peter and Derek, if you want to stand up, and Glenn also does some work for us. Glenn, if you want to stand up in the back. So whenever we have accounting issues, tax issues, and legal issues, if there's ever any problems, talk to them. That's the way to deal with that. Okay, now we'll get started. Quick outline. So we'll talk about the current status, what do we think about the markets, and then a little bit on touch on future investments, and also talk about a new investment structure going forward, and get into the questions at the end. So just by way of overview, I think it's always good just to kind of see where everything's at in terms of total equity in Highstreet. So with the 94 million that we have from all the investors, kind of the status on all that, and I break this down into a few different categories. First of all, Skyline, it's important to note, we have 19 million in Skyline units right now, and we kind of see that as a nice ability to recycle that cash into future developments. So we look at that 19 million as that can all be future development money. So it's all there, and it's cash flowing with mostly Ontario apartments. So for those who aren't familiar with Skyline, we've got 21% in the what I call the operating or selling category, which is essentially comprised of Grand Prairie, so Willowbrook, and we've got the project in Calgary that we recently converted from rental to condo, and that makes up the 20 million. Another 7.5 million roughly we just sold. So that was the Chappelle Apartments in Edmonton. We just sold. Conditions were waived last Friday, so that'll be coming back by June 15th. We'll have that cash with profit as well. So roughly 9 million coming out of Chappelle to redeploy into new opportunities. And then we have nearly 50 million in what we'd call permitting or under construction. So that's your Kelowna, West Kelowna, Guelph, and Courtenay, and Crystalina. So yeah, there's a fair amount in that category, and we're actually really happy with where that's at. The other way to break this down is to look at what we'd call the at-risk equity. So taking out the Chappelle sale and the Skyline units, it's really 68 million that we have actively deployed right now. And this is an interesting slide to contrast from last year because obviously we've moved quite a bit out of Alberta. Our split right now is about 60-40. Last year, this was the split. So for those from Alberta, I note the orange was somewhat intentional. But hopefully that whole thing isn't orange soon, but yeah, a little brown, yeah, maybe. Anyway, I think, and this is being generous, this includes the Courtney projects as well. So we were heavily invested in Alberta. I've talked a lot about that in the, if you read the annual letter. Obviously, the move to more diversification and geographic diversification has taken hold, and that's what we've been focused on. So we're pretty happy with our exit. Different story. We were, even 2.5 years ago, we were still bullish on Alberta and raised money for a couple more projects. We didn't foresee the extent of the downturn. We also didn't foresee that it would be much worse than the 2008, 2009 downturn. It was really, this is almost as bad for rental apartments as it was in the early 80s. So, kind of that whole pitch for many of you might remember, I'd say, well, even if we had a downturn like the early 80s, we'd probably break even. And that's basically where we're at. I mean, you kind of, if you look at Chappelle, we've seen at least a 14% reduction in average rents from the pro forma. So from what we were experiencing when we decided to go into that project in the market in Edmonton, because we were already in the market in Edmonton, to the time we were leasing it up and filled it up, it's basically full now. The rents, I looked at that just before this meeting, and yeah, the rents are about 14% lower. So that's as bad as it was in the early 80s. So it's an interesting contrast, which then results in selling Chappelle at, we still made money, but it's about a 10% profit on the equity in Chappelle. So certainly not our typical rates of return. That said, we did exit Heritage Valley, we exited Vanier, we exited Chappelle, and our best out of those three was actually Vanier. And Vanier did fairly well considering with annual rates of return. I think it was around 13%, Gord, offhand? Yeah, so, yeah, 12. 12, so yeah, I mean, still pretty good considering the market. So we managed to pull out about 25 million plus 9 million in profit. So, having that 34 million redeployed is fantastic. On the remaining Calgary projects, we have Skyview Ranch. I throw Upper Montney and Alberta generally as a category just because it's heavily influenced by the gas market. You could call it Alberta, it's close enough. And anyway, we don't actually have any equity in Upper Montney. We don't have any equity left, so that's not a big consideration. But we, of course, have the Calgary project, which is our largest to date in terms of equity. Recognizing how bad that market was in November when we started leasing up, the rent rates we were getting were just so far below what our expectations were. And even when we did have renters interested, they'd go down the street and come back and say, I was offered $1,100 for a 2-bedroom, can you beat it? It was just a brutal market. And we realized really quick that if we filled it up at those rates, that selling to anybody wasn't an option. We would have been underwater. Had a quick look at the condo market, saw some decent activity there, decent sales at a project just to the north of us. They were selling about 12 condos a month at a much higher price than we would have to ask to make a profit. And we embarked on that condo conversion, I guess it was around early December. Last year we made the decision and launched sales on March 17th. And we did manage to sell, since March 17th, we've sold 30 as far as I know. Gordon, if you have a more recent update, it's, no.
Still at about 30.
30, okay. Yeah, that was as of, essentially as of Monday, we had 30 sales. So, 30 sales in about 6 weeks in Calgary at this time, it was, we're pretty happy with that result. And we look forward to, carrying on a pace of sales that gets us out of Calgary in about 2 years. So that's our expectation in Calgary. We will remain in Willowbrook indefinitely. It's cash flowing now. It's full. We have a great community leader there, a very well-run community, and we'll continue to cash flow that and let the market come back. But it'll be an indefinite hold. And then same with Upper Montney and Crystalina. no immediate plans, although I should touch on Crystalina briefly. Compared to our experience in Southwest Edmonton, we're surprised at how well Crystalina is doing. We launched leasing on April 17th and 18th, sorry, it was April 18th. And we have something in the order of 18 leases already at rents that are much higher than at Chappelle. So at Chappelle, we were, certainly below what our expectations were, and I was shocked at the rents that we're getting in Crystalina. It's at least $75 higher per suite than Chappelle, which is surprising to say the least. So we're pretty optimistic with Crystalina. So in summary, in Alberta, we're comfortable with where we're at. We're not looking to go back into Alberta at this point, but this isn't an indefinite avoidance of Alberta. We still like Alberta, and we look forward to seeing the market come back. And when we see things have a steady pace and some continuing resurgence, there will come a day, I'm sure, where we'll go back into Alberta. So I just don't want everybody to think we're going to avoid it indefinitely. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll go back at some point. So what is happening? A continuation of kind of a little more flavor on some of the discussion. I'll get into more of the under construction projects now, but this is more of a contrast to what we're seeing. I mean, I think given the markets we've chosen, the margin we had in it, everything else, we still have managed to not lose money in Alberta. When you see large developers like Walton, they've been around since 1979. I just recently had a bankruptcy filing because of their impact in Alberta. It's a pretty significant difference from what we're experiencing, and obviously that's something that we're happy with. Despite that, we're actually seeing some pretty decent signs in Alberta, in Calgary specifically on the sales side. There's a line in here. Apartment sales rose 5% last month and are up almost 18% this year. So that's the April stats that came out just recently. And so that bodes well for the condo sales in Skyview Ranch, which of course we've renamed McCall Landing. Another positive sign, supply is coming down. So this is a combination of rental apartments under construction, condos under construction, and unabsorbed condos. So the little green line is unabsorbed. So when you hear news reports about, unabsorbed condos in Calgary are, they've gone up by 200% year over year. Well, yeah, that's the green line, and it's a pretty small proportion relative to what's under construction. So still a decent trend there, and we hope that continues. Similar story in Edmonton, with a little uptick more recently this year. Fortunately, that slide in Edmonton with all that orange has had a good influence on Edmonton because they keep hiring people. So there's been about 8,000 new employees for the provincial government, which has helped out the rental market in Edmonton. So in a way, we're pretty happy with that. So what's happening elsewhere? For those of you from Alberta that don't know, for anybody in Kelowna, this is fairly intuitive. We see it all the time. We know friends who are going through the trouble in finding a place. The market is very tight here right now. It's somewhere below 1% vacancy. The last report that came out from CMHC was 0.7. So yeah, the market's great. And supply is responding, though. The market is responding. There's a lot of new product coming on. So, I'm not, it looks great right now, but we don't want to create a whole bunch of really high expectations. I think it's just suffice to say it looks good. As long as nothing changes, we do expect a good result in Kelowna. Similar story in Guelph. Guelph condos, the average price of Guelph condos, March over March, actually went up 30% last year. So the condo market's on fire, the real estate market's on fire, the rental vacancy rate's below 1%. Again, really good market. Even Courtenay. 2 years ago, I never would have imagined this happening in Courtenay, but in Courtenay we've even seen a 15% increase in the average home price from March to March. So March of this year compared to March of last year. The market's very hot. We've got a realtor that he'd been calling me. He was someone we worked with previously, and he was calling me every couple of weeks with an update on the market. And you know, it's going crazy. It's going crazy. You got to convert that. You know, don't do rentals there. We've got a 71 suite condo building or rental building in Courtenay that we planned as a rental, and we just made a decision a couple of weeks ago to convert to condo. And so this. You know, we've got that. We also have, for those Arctic Sunset investors who are still stuck in this Riverwalk deal, it bodes well for that. So there's, for those of you who don't know, a few years ago we took some money out of a deal that we did really well, and we said, hey, we've made so much, let's finish this Courtenay project. And then it dragged on and on, trying to get through the approvals process in the city of Courtenay. Fortunately, as a result of that, we're in a great market. I think if we actually started construction when we anticipated, it would have been much harder to do well, and we've just been, you know, timing turned out to be everything in that project, and we've just been lucky. So just by virtue of being in the market, we get to enjoy the result of the market going up. So conclusion on that is, you know, diversity is really important. I think if you contrast our experience in Edmonton and Calgary with the experience in Courtenay, in Kelowna. I mean, I never would have guessed 2 years ago that Courtenay would be so hot right now. But just by being there and being in the market and having that geographic diversification, we're benefiting from that. And the same in Kelowna, West Kelowna. I mean, even, you know, 2 years ago, I might have been looking sideways at Kelowna. And then a year ago, I'm going, yeah, okay, this looks like a good market. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have come into Kelowna. And so it's funny how the markets all change, and you just have to be open to looking around and seeing what's available and keep an eye on that diversity and geographic diversification. So touched on all that already. So future investments, not to get into any detail, you know, when we do come out with the next round of investments, you'll see a typical thing that we send out. We'll send out a package and you'll get that, and we'll likely have another round of presentations at that point, so I'm not going to get into a ton of detail on it. Suffice it to say, we do have a site in Kamloops that my buddy Matt from university found for us, actually, so thanks Matt for sending that along. And that got us into the Kamloops market, which we've been looking at for quite a while. It's a great site, great price, and we're looking forward to getting going on that. And we do expect to raise money for Kamloops this summer. And then to throw a little curveball in there, we actually have a site in West Kelowna that we're planning for patio homes. We have a significant amount of density that we're allowed on the site, so we anticipate a patio home style development and potentially some multifamily on the site, just because of the density that we're allowed. We're not sure if that's the right product for that site, but it's something we can evaluate, and it would be a multi-year project. So again, I think this comes back to the discussion around diversity. We really like the geographic diversity we have. It's time to get into some diversity in terms of the forms of real estate that we get into. I think that having both geographic diversity and diversity in the type of real estate will be really beneficial over time, for sure. And then coming down the road, we don't have anything on the books for it yet, but just more in BC and Ontario. So we do expect to be, you know, in our future plans, we're looking at another BC project, an Ontario project in probably late spring of 2018. So however that works out timing-wise for investment, we'll let you know as soon as we know, and we'll get it out to you. Okay, so on investment structure. Don, feel free to jump in at any time at this point. We have an opportunity to consolidate all of our investments into one structure, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about this and trying to figure out the best way to do it. And for many of you, you know that we've gone from, at the beginning we consolidated investments into one LP. Whenever we had them ready, we tried to bundle them together. And part of the theory was, at that time, was we were still pretty new at it. We didn't want investors cherry picking one or the other. There was, you may not remember, but in the beginning there was very little excitement around rental apartments. When we were out there in 2010 raising money for our first rental apartment project in St. Albert, there was no appetite for it from the investment standpoint. Everybody was excited about Yellowknife, and oh wow, Yellowknife condos, that sounds exciting. And so we bundled them together thinking, oh, with this rental apartment opportunity is really good, we want to do it, but nobody would pick it if given the choice. So, and then following that, we had another Yellowknife project and a rental project, and it was the rental project that hit a home run, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted rental and not the condo. And anyway, so I think it's just, the point of that is that, we see a great benefit in being in all of them. And that's a benefit for us, it's a benefit for our investors. It allows, it's a consistency of experience for the investors. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that we have an investor who only invested in Skyview Ranch so far, and probably isn't going to invest again. So you kind of, that sucks, because we think what we've got going on here, and we really like what we've got going on and what we can produce for investors, and we're confident in our ability to do that over time in a bunch of different projects. But on one individual project, that's harder. We might miss on the odd project, and we have. So for us, this is about creating a consistency of that experience, trying to create an entity that you're then in on all of them, and you continue to invest in all of them. So that's the path we're going down. So essentially we'd have developments in one entity, new developments in one entity, and operating apartments in another. And that's the plan going forward. I touched on the why already. One thing I didn't mention, cash management. Having everything in one would allow a little more flexibility with cash. We're sometimes faced with situations where one LP could use some money right now, and another one has a ton of money sitting in a bank account, and we're going, well, can't do anything with that, so we got to go borrow, or Don and I have to put in cash to fund the project. And it just creates this constant cash flow management issue for Don and I. We're constantly the backstop on, if there's any shortfall, like even the Skyview Ranch condos as an example, the bank won't fund the condo conversion process and everything else. So, Don and I end up having to fund that, and there's just these awkward situations where we're always stuck in this situation. Whereas if we actually had an entity that had a cash balance that we could use for all the developments and everybody was benefiting the same, it wouldn't be an issue. So that would help us internally for sure. There is potential tax benefits. I'm sure all of you have probably seen the email I sent out earlier this week as we were evaluating this concept. One potential we have as part of creating this concept is to create a trust. And if we create a trust, you could invest through your RRSP or TFSA or RESP. We recognize that for a lot of you, that's not a significant number. At the same time, we've had about 50 responses that represent roughly $6.5 million in RRSP or TFSA room that you'd be willing to put into Highstreet. So when you look at those numbers, that alone means that, hey, there's an opportunity here for people to invest in this on a tax-deferred basis, so that when we make the money in this development trust, we'll call it, that's probably what it'll be called, but if we make the money in there, then you can earn it without paying any tax on it for that portion of your investment. So even though it may be a small portion, it may only be 10% or 20% or even 5% of your investment, still that building that wealth tax without paying tax on it every time we roll a project, it would be fantastic. So it's something that even I would take advantage of, even though it would be a really small portion. If I've got 52,000 in TFSA room to put into there, do that for 10 years and it comes out at 250,000 tax-free. Well, that's a pretty good deal. So that's what we're looking for out of it. Don, anything to add?
No, I think that sums it up. It's important to note that in the projects that we do have, like 2016 LP, there's 4 under 1 LP. And what would happen in the past is as those projects get sold, we'd exit out of that LP, but we're just going to continue on. That LP essentially will continue to invest in new ones. So it's not that huge of a change, but it's a lot more stability in terms of cash management, and I think that's the biggest thing. So you can put your money in, you can leave your money in, you can roll your profits if you want into new investments, or they will be rolled into investments inside the thing. And if we add the additional ability to defer taxes through the tax deferral vehicles out there, RRSP, TFSA, RESP, then it adds another level of benefit. So it's a road that, as Scott said, we've been thinking about going down for quite a long time. Finally getting a bunch of lawyers in a room, which is a scary thing. We came to a structure that works, that we like, that's fairly straightforward, doesn't raise any red flags, nothing scary about it, and which is what we always want. As a board, we look at it and say, okay, is this the way to go? Is it going to be easy for everybody to understand? And as I think this morning, we arrived at the conclusion that it's a great way to go. It's a great structure. It's very comfortable, and we like it. So we're going to take questions afterwards. I'm sure there'll be more questions, but feel free to conjure up those questions in your mind. We'll try and address them best we can.
Okay, thanks, Don. And here we are. There you go. So, yeah. Perfect. So, yeah, and I should point out, sorry, before I forget, Lar from Coast brought in a bottle of Glenfiddich. I don't think any of you drink Scotch, but if you did, put a business card in there or fill your name out. We'll do a draw on that. And please help yourselves to whatever swag, including the 6 packs of beer. If you happen to be in Kelowna and can take a 6-pack, then feel free. Obviously, for those on the planes, they can't do that. But yeah, help yourselves. There's lots of swag there. In the past, we haven't had to restrict it, so we don't expect anyone to just fill up a bag. Be reasonable, and it's all good. It's all yours. Oh, and please, for the investors, there's piggy banks there with the Highstreet logo on them. So that'd be good to take one of those, and you can put your Highstreet savings into there, and for the next round, of course. Yeah. Okay.
We do have this being videotaped by Jan. The reason for that is not all of our investors are here, and we actually have one in particular, my cousin-in-law who lives in France, who's a significant investor, and he would really like to see, hi Scott, what's going on here. So Scott has a mic on that's connected to the camera. That's why he has a mic. It doesn't actually broadcast in this room. I don't have a mic, but we'll use this we'll repeat all the questions that you asked just for the sake of getting it recorded.
Okay. Perfect. Should we sit down or stand?
Yeah, we'll stand.
Stand. Okay. Good. Questions? Okay, Bill.
Any new analysis on Ontario with the pending legislation on the provincial government on that issue?
Yeah, for sure. So Bill asked about the pending legislation in Ontario. It actually took effect already. So they announced it, and I think passed it that night. And so they've got rent control in place now in Ontario that applies to, previously they had rent control on apartments built prior to, I think it was 1991. And they had limits on inflation adjusted rents. they applied it now to everything across the board. So great for votes, terrible for renters, but whatever, that's the decision they've made. So they've got an inflation-adjusted allowable rent increase, just like BC has had for a number of years. So BC has the same thing. The only difference in Ontario is they've made an arbitrary cap of 2.5% on rent increases. So, you know, it was a bit of a, you know, take a look at it. I think for those who are basing their pro forma on ever increasing rents, that might be an issue. When we go into a market, we look at current rents and say, if this works today, it works for us. We also know that in the apartments, we typically have turnover about 30% annual. So on new rentals, you don't have that rent control. You just set the market at whatever the market is. That's one kind of, so in 3 years, you're basically rolling over an entire building. So we don't see it as that big of an issue. Even at 2.5%, realistically, you don't want to get a reputation as a landlord that's gouging people year over year anyway. So, you know, you wouldn't look at dramatic rent increases as a way to capture what's going on in the market. If it was cash flowing when you built it, it's going to be cash flowing well, even at 2.5% increases. So, yeah, we don't see it as a dramatic impact.
Scott, can you add to that how you see that impacting Skyline and the overall market as well?
Yeah, good question. Rich just asked how it impacts Skyline and the overall market. I'm not familiar enough with how big a rent increase they're putting through every year. My guess is because a lot of Skyline's product is older. The vast majority of their portfolio will be pre-1991, so this is no change for them. You know, they don't have a lot of new product in Ontario, so that's my first response. Secondly, I think in aggregate, if it constrains supply at all, long term it's good for a company that already has a whole bunch of older rentals, because they're not competing with a bunch of new supply. But yeah, that's the best answer I can give you, I guess, on that. Yeah,
Scott,
Keith?
could you explain how you, say, a big province like Ontario, how you would select a site? Is that something you go out there and get in a car and drive from town to town?
Yeah, you start with the city. Just look at rents. Yeah, oh, sorry, the question was how do we select sites in a place like Ontario? We've got a dartboard in the office, and I just kind of, yeah. Not far off, maybe. No, it really starts with looking at average rents. You just try to gather average rent data from wherever you can. CMHC produces it. There's some reports that'll include a bunch of different cities, and it really starts there. If a market has high rents, it's worth another look. And then you just dig into it further and, you know, look on Kijiji and find out, you know, where are the competitive rents? Is there any new product? What's the rent on new product? How does that look? How's that going to compare to what we build? And then once you get comfortable with the rent levels, if we think it's an opportunity, you know, at a glance at vacancy rate, we don't want vacancy rate to be, you know, above 5, but really anything below 5 is decent. And, you know, you look at that, and then it's a matter of evaluating land prices and cap rates. So you know, after that, it's call brokers and try to find somebody that is familiar with the market and find land. And once the land is found, then it'd be finally time to go out and look at it. But yeah, I wouldn't spend time driving around. I mean, the beauty of Google Earth now is, you know, as soon as we're told about sites, you can go online and you see it. You see everything around it. You can, pardon me, you can drive down the road and see what's around. And I mean, it's been fantastic as you know, in the development industry to be able to go on that and just look at it before you even make an offer on it, really. So, yeah, I don't want to drive around Ontario. Yeah. I think Mark, you had a question.
Did I see something in there that suggests that there was at one point Highstreet was, there was a philosophy of buying and holding apartment buildings and building up an inventory, buy, fill up, and sell. are you kind of going back to the buy and hold? There's certain projects that the market has kind of made that decision for you, but is it more proactive, or did I read something wrong?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think we would be more proactive with it and manage it based on the capital that we have available and the capital that we're going to redeploy. So if you know, if we do a projection on it, even say the 2016 LP, we could see a situation where we get all of our capital back from selling 2 of the projects, and we can hold 2 out of the 4. So, you know, it begs the question of, you know, if we can recycle that much capital from 2 out of the 4, maybe that's not the number. It might be 2 out of 4. It might be 1 out of the 4. But it's something going forward where we create an entity, and this is part of the bigger picture plan, is create an entity like Communities LP that has cash flowing operating apartments, and not just the ones we're stuck with, because you know that has certain implications. But we want it to be a good diversity of good and, you know, apartments we can't sell. But it would be this diversified entity that would cash flow back to the trust. The trust then would have its own covenant, so the development side would have its own covenant, its own cash flow. The banks would love it. Wherever Lar is in the room, I was going to get him. Yeah, he's nodding. Yeah, thumbs up. So the banks would love that kind of concept because it allows Don and I to start to step back on the personal guarantees and the cash management side, always being the backstop. And so what does that do for you as investors? That allows us to start moving the needle, so to speak, moving the percentage towards the investors. So if Don and I currently have 37.5% of the profit, obviously if we have less risk, if we don't have to do personal guarantees because we have this cash flowing entity that supports bank loans, then Don and I start to step back and increase the percentage that the investors get. So that's part of the future vision for sure.
And we're still the single largest investors.
Yeah, we'll go Paul and then Jason.
Have you sold all, and maybe, I'm sure you told everybody, all the past apartments to Skyline? Is that your main REIT, or are you considering other guys? If you are,
Yeah, for sure. The question was whether or not we've sold all of our past apartments to Skyline and if we're considering anybody else. And to answer the first question, no, we've sold to others, for sure. We've sold Canadian Urban, Real Star. The latest sale to Chappelle is just a private buyer. So yeah, we're open to whomever. We have a good relationship with Skyline. It's a great relationship. It doesn't always work. You know, they're very realistic about it. It's not set in stone for either of us. So we're open to that. I forgot. I got to say when I end. I got to say Don. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
It's funny how there is. Sorry, one more thing on that. It's funny how the REITs have bailed from Alberta, and it's private buyers that are buying.
banks.
Same thing happened for Dream Office REIT. They sold, I think, 12 office buildings in Alberta recently at cheap, like $120, $130 a foot, and they mostly went to. None of them went to REITs. None of them went to big REITs for sure. Maybe a couple of small REITs, but mostly went to private investors. So the REITs have just bailed. And arguably, they should be maybe looking at Alberta as an opportunity. As Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett would have said, when everybody's fearful, get aggressive. But they just run for the hills. It's kind of funny to watch. And including Skyline. They just want no part of Alberta.
Yeah, we sold them over 250 million of apartments in Alberta just before the downturn. So, yeah, that's sucks for them.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, edit that out. Any other questions?
Well, on
Corey?
Alberta, is there, and I think we have this conversation every time I see you, but is there an opportunity to buy some troubled projects right now?
Yeah, we're not seeing it. The Dream Office REIT was the big deal, but yeah, the office, you'd think the office market would have more opportunity, but it's largely owned by large pension funds and REITs, and large institutions, and so they're weathering it because the rest of their portfolio is doing really well. We see the odd bankruptcy in land. We've had a couple come across the desk from Calgary, but nothing that exciting. Even the Walton bankruptcy, there'll be some land in Edmonton, and there'll be some land. Actually, I don't think the Calgary properties aren't in the CCAA. They excluded them from the bankruptcy process. So, yeah, I guess the answer is no, not really. And then we'll come to you, Jason. Don, anything to add?
Yeah, there's actually, I was in the Bow Tower in Calgary at a conference the other day, looking down at the Brookfield Place, the brand new building, and it's all glass, and you can see right through it. I mean, every 60 floors, completely I did hear from a commercial realtor that there are some office buildings converted to condos, which is kind of interesting. There's 30% vacancy, arguably maybe more than that, and still a lot of stuff being built in commercial downtown office. The urban office not doing as bad, but yeah, that market is a bit of a basket case in that world.
Thanks. Jason?
Yeah, I noticed on the slide there's two entities, operating and a development. Does that mean investing in one or the other?
No.
Great question. The question is,
yeah, good question.
With
Yeah.
two entities operating in development, can you invest in one and not the other? So we're going to hook them together.
Yeah, so it's a complicated answer, I guess, to start, but it won't be complicated going forward. To start, the intent is, and we still have to talk to all the investors in the two projects that we would anticipate putting in the beginning, but it would be Willowbrook and Upper Montney in the beginning, and that would form the basis of the concept. And from there, any apartments that we do sell to community, we'll call it Communities LP for now, Highstreet Communities LP, which will more than likely be the name. If we bought, say if Highstreet Communities LP bought Crystalina, Crystalina would be bought by Communities LP, by Communities LP issuing units in Communities LP to the development side. So the development trust would get these units issued, and those units would pay cash flow based on the apartments in Communities LP. So they would have a payout rate that they would pay. Now the development trust would own all these units in Communities LP, and the money would flow back to it.
Holding company structure.
Yeah, I mean that's effectively what it does, and essentially the investors in the development side would end up owning a huge chunk of Communities LP. Yeah.
So Scott, is it each? Is there an overall kind of target rate that you have of return for the overall communities, or are you saying that each community, based on how it's performing, will have those shares paying out, or is it an overall? Kind of like Skyline has their their target of, I guess, is 7%. Is that kind of how things are going? And then the second part of it is, can you talk about the cash out and the free flow of if you want to cash out and how that would work, and if there's any restrictions or anything like that?
Sure. So you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, the question, thanks Rich. And I think before we ask the question, we just finished this morning. All the I's haven't been dotted and T's crossed, but there will be a method for people to enter and exit. There'll be a liquidity events that happen at some periods of time that you can get out or you can get in. Same as you can now. With respect to how the Communities LP will operate and what percentage return it'll spit back to Development LP, yet to be determined. But it's I think suffice to say that's structurally that's how it'll work, or how we envision it. And we were literally working on talking to the lawyer this morning on the phone about some tax implication, over breakfast. So I don't think it's a great time to get into all the gory details, but because they're not crystallized yet. But fundamentally, ability to get in and out obviously has to take place. Might be aligned with when a property sells. If that property sells externally, it would be different than if it gets kept in the community's LP and so on and so on. So we'll have to figure all that stuff out and get some stuff in writing and answers to questions. But I don't know if we could answer that any better than that, Scott, at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, we'll have a distribution from communities LP, a percentage rate that we're targeting, and yeah, overall.
Overall
but
rate, yeah.
yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be individual units.
Yeah, it wouldn't be individual per community or per project. It would be for the overall. So that would be the anticipation. But yeah, too early to get into all the details. The plan is when we go to raise money for the next round, Kamloops, West Kelowna, whatever, that would be the time that we would have all the details rolled out for everybody. Okay. Paul and then Larry and Simon. Oh, sorry.
So would it be necessarily that you would choose that particular road in LP in one geographical location, or would you pull them together from different locations?
Would the one LP be in one geographic location? No, it'll, the communities LP will own communities everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the smaller ones as well would be geographically based?
They'll all developments will be done in the one.
Yeah.
All the ones that we keep would be held in the other. And we probably would have done it all in one if we could figure out a way to do it instead of having two.
Larry, then Simon. Sorry, Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, probably a bit premature considering where you're doing it, but this kind of new blended model, if you want to call it going forward, do you have kind of a target blended sort of return idea in your mind about what that looks like?
Yeah, we'd still go for the 15 to 20% annual.
Yeah, that won't change.
Yeah, that won't change. Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't have to make it. You don't have to get your capital back and make another. Come to another presentation and listen to us.
It's just once a year.
Just make a decision to leave it in. Hopefully, us and this learned board keeps a good eye on Scott and keeps him humble and modest and spending time with his kids and building relationships and doing all the stuff that's important.
That's good. Okay, Simon?
Yeah, my question is, when you're going to start this new model of investment, are you going to have a cutoff time? That means the new products, Kamloops and Kelowna West, would then be under that new structure, and the old version, which we are in now, would finish up on its old method, and then the new method would start with the new project?
It's not really an old and a new method.
No, but
The 2016 LP would kind of roll under the structure that will include the 2017 LP. So we'll put them all together.
oh, okay.
That's the plan, yeah. Yeah, nothing
So there's no
before.
cutting, this is old and now we start new?
That was an option. We considered that, like let's start this in 2018, but this makes more sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of equity in the 2016 LP. There's about 40 million there that, the sooner we start on this, the sooner we have that benefit of rolling it going forward, and really by later in 2018, essentially it becomes self-sustaining. So it's a great opportunity to do it now.
And you don't have to opt in, you could opt out. I mean, 2016, from what you saw, and if things stay the same, should be pretty darn good. If things stay the same in the Kelowna market.
Okay, Paul.
Certainly see the benefits, the direction you guys are taking this, and all the items that you highlighted there. It sounds, and I'm reading between the lines, but just for a sense of timing, you guys are trying to get this in place by third quarter, like halfway through. I'm trying to get a sense of timing.
Summer.
Summer this year?
Yeah, looking at Glenn, he nodded, yeah. Yeah, it's really, it's going to be
The question was, when do we want to have this in place? And
yeah, Glenn's going to be working on it right after this meeting, actually, yeah. And Peter and Derek will have to loop them in, get them going on it.
we've been thinking about it for a long time.
Okay.
So
It makes a lot of sense. I think it's good for everybody.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, the objective that we need to meet, Paul, is to have it ready in time for the next round.
Okay.
Now, is this working on the, is it okay?
And then on the Kelowna, just two-part question, your Mission Flats and your one up in West Kelowna, I'm not gonna be able to get out there, just how are they coming along timing-wise, and can you just give us a quick blurb on that?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure you put it out.
Paul's just asked for a timing update on
All the projects.
all the projects,
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
360.
All the projects.
Well, we get one of your learned folks to come up and talk to us about that.
Yeah, we could do a quick rundown.
Christina?
Christina? Yeah.
Christina loves being put on the spot.
Kristalina, we've got people moving in June 1st. So I'll focus specifically on the 2016 LP. So Kristalina, June 1st move-ins. Mission Flats, probably a January 1st move-in. I'm looking in the back to see if heads are nodding back there. Yeah, January 1st move-in. Corey, Matt, look good? Yeah, not sure, yeah. I think that, yeah, the schedule shows the first building being ready in December. So as long as that's still on target, we're good. West Kelowna, we'd be looking at first move-ins. Christina, do you know the date in West Kelowna? It's got to be, I would guess at this stage, it'd be a May 1st move-in. We're just getting going. We might see concrete being poured today. So just got the building permit picked up this morning. Yeah. Woo! After a crazy subdivision process, so finally had a building permit this morning, so should see concrete being poured. So that's West Kelowna. What else? Guelph. Guelph, we're behind on the start, so no solid estimate on that at this stage, but would start construction in the next month or two. And that rounds out the 2016 LP. I think there's anything else. That's about, yeah, you got the rest of the update. Okay. Good. Yeah, Dave.
I understand that you used to outsource the construction and then you've taken on the actual hands-on construction. I was wondering how that's going. That's quite a different part of the business to be in. I'm just curious how that's going, particularly when you're getting to Guelph, it's far away, how do you see all that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I mean, Train, they've been with us for, my brother Matt runs Train. He's in the back here, and so feel free to talk to Matt. He just waved there. Corey is the VP Construction, Hal, their finance guy, and so they've been with us a long time, and we've done a lot of projects with them. So kudos to Train for all that. And yeah, we just decided, I don't know when it was, as a board, we decided we'd get into construction and made that move. Our first project is the West Kelowna project. We don't anticipate doing Ontario. It's certainly not our plan for Guelph. We'll stay close to home with construction for the first couple that we do. We don't want to go far afield in that. We need to learn lessons close to home before we try to do it like Train does all over the place. So we recognize that that's it's part of our learning curve. And so far, we're happy with how things are going, other than a late start, which wasn't the construction side's fault. I think we have a great site supervisor that hopefully many of you will meet today. We have a great construction coordinator. Angela is here, and look forward to putting that forward. Jeff, who's running construction, is actually in California right now, but he's really liking getting into all of the construction details, and yeah, we see a good opportunity to do well there and continue it on, for sure. Don, anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. Really? Keith?
We did have a very large and long-winded debate over that topic, so I don't think it came lightly, Dave. By the way, I met Dave last night. He's an investor in Highstreet. But I actually met Dave about, 35 years ago?
Yeah.
Dave's a dentist. And in my previous life, I developed a dental application that ran his dental practice, and it worked. Well, at least he's still talking to me. And Dave actually was a smart guy. He built a practice where he didn't have to be there. He actually hired dentists, and then he went to Phoenix and built it up to quite a large business and sold out. Now he's investing in Highstreet. Kind of an interesting story.
So,
Anyway, thanks.
so speaking of guys that you sold applications to, Keith had a question.
Oh, yeah. I just-
Yeah.
This is Keith Bryant. He's actually our first investor.
Aside from John.
Aside from Scott and I.
Scott, just on the.
Smart guy for investing first, by the way. And speaking of, I sold an application to run his hotel back in 1982, and we hadn't written it yet. And we convinced him somehow to put this application in to run his, and he's still talking to me.
Yeah. The story Keith tells me is that he's like another salesman
I know,
shows
I
up
showed
at the
up
hotel,
in a
yeah,
Mercedes,
and he's like, "Who is this
about
guy in the Mercedes? Like, what kind of salesman shows up in a Mercedes?"
And the story I like to tell is we went over to Earl's restaurant, and I kept talking to the waitresses and asking them how they liked their system. I was trying to sell Keith the restaurant system, and all Keith was interested in was a beer. He could have cared less listening to me or the waitress or anybody else. Some things haven't changed.
Okay, now your question. Yeah.
He wouldn't walk over crushed glass to have a Coors Light. It's a good thing that Matt didn't bring Coors Light here, because Keith would have been really. We digress.
I'd be exiting the partnership.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was your question, Keith? Do you want the microphone?
Sorry, it was just some of your comments about the evolution of the product in terms of energy efficiency and some of the windows and things. Is that real? Are we pushing the envelope a lot on the quality of the units? Is that
Great question around energy efficiency. We do solar panels and triple pane windows and LED lighting and extra insulation and noise proofing. I think it's great for Scott to talk about the business benefit of doing that, how that affects business in terms of not only the operating entity, but selling them when we sell them, using the cap rate calculation, how we get a return on things like solar panels. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll address Keith's question. We'll come back, Deborah. So if everybody can hear me, you can hear me in the back. Yeah, we're good. We'll continue to push the envelope on energy efficiency. What do I have to say about that? A couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, we decided to go down the road of Built Green and getting certified for almost what we were already doing. There was, the sense that, hey, we were already fairly efficient energy-wise. Let's see what kind of rating we could get. And when we looked into it, not only were we looking at Built Green certified, was Built Green Silver was a realistic target. And so we've gone down that road of actually being recognized in the market for what we're doing on the mostly on the energy side. There's things that Built Green enforces on the materials you use and construction waste and that sort of thing, but it's mostly on the energy side, and that's really where we see the benefit on the business case too, because if we, a traditional company might look at payback on an investment in mechanical equipment and say, well, I want a 7-year payback. Well, when we're selling apartments at a 5 cap, for every $1 we save, we get $20 on the sale on an annual basis. So if we save $1 on an annual basis on whatever we spend, we get $20. So all of a sudden, your investment in technology, whether it's solar, whether it's more energy efficient envelope, all that stuff can really reap benefits on the sale side. And I think it's also it just strikes me as the right thing to do. If the technology's out there and the ability is out there to make buildings more efficient, then we should be doing it. Buyers love it. The institutional buyers love it. Going forward, we believe there's a bigger and bigger market for condo buyers that are interested in that. They're interested in lower energy costs and you know, being green. Certainly the millennials coming forward, that's a big push. But you know, I come back to the idea that it just makes sense, and I think we should do more of it, and we will continue to push the envelope. We will continue to go down that road.
With respect
Yeah.
to finishing upgrades, you made some mention in one of your notes about quartz countertops going from P-line to quartz. That's just in most recent, because I don't think I ever saw another P-line.
Yeah, for sure. We did quartz. I think the first one was Skyview Ranch, right? Yeah. So Skyview really was a response to the market changing. So you know, the market downturn in Alberta taught us a few lessons, and at least one of which was quality wins in a downturn. So you know, when we were looking for buyers as that downturn was underway, the institutional buyers, the big buyers like Boardwalk REIT, Real Star, whoever it may be, they were looking for quality compared to condo. I mean, they're looking at it going, hey, if our competitors are largely condos going forward, we need to be at least as good as the condos out there. And they wanted 2-bed, 2-bath. They wanted underground parking. They wanted quartz countertops. They wanted the stainless steel appliances. Right? So all these things that you'd see typically in a condo, that's where the market moved. And we were probably, you know, I kind of caught a glance at Corey over here. We were probably 10 years behind the market in the United States. I mean, in Seattle, the quality level of rental apartment construction is, you know, probably beyond what we're doing for condos up here. It's incredible where the rental market has gone in the United States and what they're building. So, yeah, that's just it's a reaction to recognizing the market and what people are looking for, and it also gives us a ton of flexibility. I mean, you look at Skyview Ranch now, and you know, we're certainly going after value there in terms of we're looking for buyers that are looking for value and being at the lower end of the price point for condos, but without the quartz countertops and the stainless to sell the sizzle, it'd be a lot harder to sell those condos right now. So it does give us some flexibility to switch when the market changes on us, for sure. So we'll definitely be, again, going more in that direction going forward. Like if Crystalina had about 25% of the 2 bedrooms were 2-bed, 2-bath, and we can inverse that in Mission Flats. Mission Flats is about 75% 2-bed, 2-bath out of the 2 bedrooms, and we'll do that. That's going forward. So that's Mission Flats forward. Everything is as much as possible. When we do 2 beds, it's 2-bed, 2-bath. Don, anything to add?
No, that was good.
Yeah. No further comment?
No further comment.
Yeah.
Wait. I have no further comment.
All right. Any other questions? Come on. It's the hard ones. Yeah, Corey, go ahead. Oh, yeah, Deborah, yeah, you had a question, sorry.
The tax benefit of green on either side you talked about mechanical or technological.
Yeah, the question is whether or not there's any tax benefits on the green technology, mechanical equipment, or whatever. There sometimes is. You know, to be honest, we don't spend a ton of time looking for it. It tends to be a pain when you try to get it. We've done it in the past. We did it in Yellowknife when we did Energuide 80 up there. There is a new benefit for buyers in BC. Actually, no, sorry, that's countrywide. It's a CMHC program for some level of energy efficiency. You can get a rebate on your fee for the insurance, for CMHC insurance. So there's some benefits there. They're not huge, and that doesn't tip the scale for us.
Not on the developer side, builder side.
Yeah, it just doesn't. Either way, it's pretty minor. The rebates tend to be minimal, and we'll go after whatever's available. But it's typically not enough to change the thinking. Yeah. Yep.
I think I saw something recently where Colonial City put out another subsidization of future property taxes or something. They've got another fund. I think the two projects, you were beneficiaries of that?
Yeah.
Deferred taxes, and it wasn't deferred, it was just a write-off or something. Can you just go a little bit into that? And are we chasing that stuff, and just comment a little bit on that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. There's the question was whether or not we're taking advantage of tax incentives with the City of Kelowna. And yes, there was two that we took advantage of for Mission Flats. Two incentives. One is if the vacancy rate is below 3%, the City of Kelowna will waive property tax on the building portion of the project for 10 years. So if you build and get approved in the time frame when the vacancy rate is below 3%, then you get a big tax holiday, which on Mission Flats is worth somewhere in excess of $1 million to us in present value. So that was a huge one. And probably tipped the scale to make the decision to go into Kelowna back in the day when we weren't anticipating such a fantastic market. The other one is pretty minor. It's they have an annual amount that they contribute to rental housing. And based on the total number of approved, and they have a, I can't remember the exact number. Gord, is 400,000 or something this past year in total, and then they divide it by all the apartments and pay, and it's,
Highstreet in Kelowna is not West Kelowna?
That's Kelowna. Yeah, West Kelowna has a different program, which was actually site-specific for us. They carved out an area and said if you densify in this area, it wasn't rental apartment specific, it was just a density-specific tax benefit through a reduction in development cost charges. And that was a 30% reduction in development cost charges, which was worth how much to us? How much was it total? Alice, do you know?
No, I'm guessing a third would be
400,000? Yeah, because what were the development cost charges that we paid? We just paid, right? What was the, you made me sign some blank checks. What was the amount? Come on. Come on.
I'm supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
850,000, but that included some other fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a third of that. Well, a third of 1.2.
About $1 million. And then,
So around 300,000 anyway in West Kelowna. Yeah. Sorry, the blank check thing doesn't happen very often, just so you know. I was trying to run to this meeting yesterday, and he said, we're gonna get the development permit today. Here, quick, sign this. Okay. He's very trustworthy.
Are there other communities that have the same program currently?
Sorry?
Are there other cities that are under investigation that have the similar programs, or?
Not that we're aware of. No, we certainly look into it when we get into a city, but yeah, nothing that's on the books right now for the other areas that we're looking at. Yeah. Wasn't there one was there a question in the back? No?
So you're talking about energy efficiency and the benefits to the operating side. Do you want to elaborate on solar? Like I noticed Rob's here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the question was whether or not we wanted to elaborate on solar. We're putting a lot of money into solar. So, I think everybody's aware of that. If you're not, yeah, it's a big investment. We're basically covering the roofs of the buildings with solar to cover all of the common area utilities basically from Kelowna forward. And we just see it as, yeah, we did an Airdrie a few years ago. That was a kind of a test model for us in Airdrie. And that was a number of years ago, and at the time our total installed cost was about $3 a watt, and now we're getting down close to $2 a watt. And we just see the opportunity in solar going forward to be tremendous. The price, the full installed price keeps coming down, mostly because of components and the cost of the materials coming down. So yeah, it's just a huge opportunity going forward, and we'll continue to do more of that. It depends how you look at it. I mean, if you looked at a payback on today's energy rates, we get into some peak power rates and everything else. If you get into peak power, it really pays back quick, but let's assume Kelowna is about a 12-year payback. And normally it's, well, a 12-year payback, do I want to bother doing that? Well, the difference is for us, if we spend 100,000 in solar to save 10,000 a year in electricity, most buyers are going to look at that and look at our operating costs and go, okay, well that 10,000 in savings is actually worth more like 200,000. There is some question about overall life of the solar panels, but you know, there's solar panels that have been in use since the 70s and are still producing at over 90% of their initial efficiency. So we really see this as something that will continue to be a benefit long term. Suffice it to say, on the selling side, the value of that investment of 100,000 is a lot more than 100,000, and somewhere, you know, I'm not saying it's a full 200,000, but it's going to be up in that 150,000 range is my expectation. So, you know, we see a pretty big payback on that, on anything we sell. And then obviously on the operating side, if we can finance 75% of that at you know 3.5%, there's a huge benefit there as well.
What's the market doing with regards to that? Are you leading the market on that, or is that like a lot of people adopting that?
What's the market doing in terms of solar, like other?
Yeah, like what sort of adoption as far as the, you know,
sort of adoption on solar on apartment buildings?
Yeah, like, or is it something that's kind of a differentiator with regards to our products, or is everybody kind of going that way?
Is it a differentiator?
Yeah, certainly in apartments, condos and apartments, we're leading. And I think that's you know, by virtue of having a relationship with Rob, and you know, he's been in the solar business for, I don't know how long, Rob? How long you?
10 years.
10 years, and so he's seen the prices come down and kind of reminds us of this every once in a while, and then we were convinced we should go in this direction and work with Rob, and he's you know, got the installed price down to a point where you're going, you know, this is great. I don't know if he's really just that competitive compared to everybody else. Maybe he's just the lowest price guy out there. But when we look at it, it makes a ton of sense. And it could just be that it's so new. I mean, even if 4 years ago it was $3 a watt and now it's $2 a watt, people just haven't caught on. But we do see it as a differentiator going forward.
So is it a really low percentage? Is it, I don't know if you know or have any idea?
No idea. Do you have any idea installed percentage on new condos and rental apartments, Rob, what it would be?
It's really hard to say, but judging by the emails and phone calls I get on a daily basis,
It's increasing?
It's going through the roof.
Yeah.
One thing is
Is that a pun?
with Highstreet, I was able to go directly to manufacturers and purchase directly from the manufacturers, bypassing all the wholesalers, so.
I think Rob's selling out.
Yeah.
That's why we were able to get it. And
No, that's
I
fantastic.
convinced them that with an apartment project as a showcase in Kelowna, that they really wanted to sharpen their pencils, so.
I think the salient point from the investor perspective is that not only is this a green initiative, which is nice, the paybacks aren't fantastic, but when you apply the savings on electricity to the cap rate, it's good business. So it's a win-win, especially with the price of solar dropping. And if they do, like I have a solar system at home, it's only a 10 kilowatt, but I burn about, because I'm paying 2.9 cents a kilowatt, exclusive of fees. The fees add up to a bunch. I pay about $25 a month for electricity, and I produce about $25 a month worth of electricity. So I save $25 a month on a $30,000 solar system. It doesn't make a ton of economic sense. If that was a $20,000 system, it still wouldn't make any sense. Where it would make sense is if you get peak power, because we produce during the middle of the day when there's peak power requirements, and businesses pay peak power pricing, so they're paying a lot more middle of the day than they pay middle of the night, and that's when we produce. But in Alberta, so far, there's no peak pricing on solar, so we can't get it. In Ontario, we have a friend that has I don't know what he spent on it, $2 million solar system on his barn on a ranch in rural Ontario that he gets about $450,000 a year from. The government has a contract, I think it's a 20 or 25-year contract with him. Do you remember, Scott? And he gets 65 cents a kilowatt. Compare that to us in Alberta paying 2.9 cents a kilowatt. We're getting 2.9 cents a kilowatt for what we generate. Murray here is Murray Sissons from Alberta, lives in rural Alberta and is completely off the grid with his, so he's been an innovator on solar systems. There's no power lines running to his house, a little Honda generator outside, and Murray and Hetty, and they produce electricity, store it in batteries, and use it to run their house.
And a bike when you want to watch TV. Yeah.
His house is,
Yeah.
his house is always a little dim inside. That's one of the problems.
We haven't seriously looked at it. I don't think it's a technology that we would use, but you know, maybe in the future.
Never say never.
Yeah, never say never.
From what I've read, it's a great idea in milder climates. Electricity cost is everything because you got to pump the water down the well and pump it back out, so on and so on.
We are looking at cogen. We actually had some university students, some engineering students at UBCO do a study on cogen for us, and I know that their results needed some more analysis and waiting to hear back on that. But Jeff was leading the charge because of his background in mechanical engineering. So we are, you know, we're always interested in new ideas.
Really neat, and it's coming into its own. We actually looked at it at WestJet 20-some years ago. We actually had a little cogen machine, and fundamentally the way cogen works is you use, say, natural gas to run a turbine electric generator, and then the heat that comes out the back end is used to heat the building. That would be a good example of cogen. So you're not just exhausting the hot gases and not doing anything with them, but in bigger cogen facilities where they take natural gas and produce electricity, they use the exhaust to run steam heaters, and then they use that steam to run other turbines. So they really extract a lot of efficiency out of every gigajoule of gas burned. Neat idea. So in an apartment, you'd have a little micro unit that was just enough to power the entire building, and it would somehow be tied into solar for when solar is producing during the day. The big innovation, or the big change in technology over the next few years will be in the battery technology. Tesla's really kind of led the charge on that with their lithium-ion batteries and their gigafactory in Nevada, where they're going to be making those. But I think you'll see the quantum leaps in storage, because that's the problem now, is you can produce electricity, but how do you store it? So we store it in the grid and extract from the grid when it's nighttime and not producing. So some of these technologies are really coming into their own now, and gas prices would have to plummet to make them really, or I mean, soar to make them really make sense.
Any more questions? Please.
So why don't we do this? We've been an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half. Why don't we get up, stretch your legs, pull the underwear with some Crocs and stuff, and grab a coffee and.
Gonna take a break and come back to questions, or do you want to?
Do you want to take a break and come back to questions? Does anybody have any burning questions that you don't want to ask in a public forum? We can talk about them offline, or we could grab a coffee and sit down again. Let's say anybody want to do that? Grab a coffee and sit down again and ask some more questions. One person. Okay.
So
we won't do that.
Don, are you hungry?
Not yet.
Okay, just check.
There's sandwiches in the back. That's true.
It is
Okay.
12:30 Alberta time.
Yeah. Okay, Hetty.
There's a condo unit in Kelowna here, downtown by the water.
Okay.
They use geothermal, don't they? Do they have any economic benefit that you have
Question
heard,
is,
or
there's a condo unit in Kelowna that uses geothermal. If it's down by the water, they might use the water for heat.
Have you heard?
Not familiar with it, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those technologies always look great until you get into we have a neighbor in Alberta that has geothermal to run their house, and it just doesn't work. At the end of the day, it just doesn't work. You can't get enough heat to warm the house up.
Okay, Ken and then Matt.
Geothermal development in Kamloops, Sun Rivers, and they have huge apartment blocks up there too, and they're all running on geothermal.
And
Yeah.
it's really high maintenance, and it doesn't work like the tallest bit, and it's more expensive to run, and the power is an issue too, the power it takes running the loop.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody heard that, but yeah, Matt is one of the probably largest property manager in Kamloops. His dad's here, and that was Ken, a buddy of his dad's. they're familiar with what's going on up there. And as Matt said, the geothermal experience just hasn't been what it was cracked up to be in Kamloops, and on some of these larger apartments, it's a lot of maintenance and expense. So thanks for that, Matt. Ken?
Speaking of Kamloops, Scott, do you have any concerns with the proposed Ajax mine and its proximity to your development lands there? And is that something you hope gets passed for, economic reasons, or do you?
Yeah, it's probably, in the scheme of things, it's a balance. It's it's kind of neither positive nor negative if it gets passed. I think the economic benefits, if it gets passed, are good. I think it's far enough away that on the negative side it won't be a huge impact. But yeah, either way, we're okay with that and are happy with the investment there. So yeah, there's a mine that was proposed a couple miles away off the back of the site there. So yeah, it's something we're aware of, but I think as a rental apartment, the benefits of the economic activity could easily outweigh any negative impact from that connotation. But they seem to be going through a process and talking about being very respectful to the community and everything else. So yet to be determined, I guess. Any other questions? Okay, well, if that's it for questions, I recognize that I did some introductions, and my lovely wife came in after I did the round of introductions. So if Melissa could just stand up briefly. Everybody who doesn't know Melissa, this is my other partner, not Dawn, but probably my best partner in life, Melissa. Please say hi to her, and thanks for coming. And yeah, hopefully you have a chance to chat with her. And yeah, she's been a great support through all this High Street adventure. So thank you for that.
And Roxanne, same.
Yeah. That's your cue, Don. Yeah.
Just before we go to break, I did want to point out that, although I tell Scott never to blow his own horn, they did win a very prestigious award here in Kelowna, the Kelowna Chamber of Commerce. Is it a small business?
Yeah. We just made the cutoff for small business.
Out of something like 62 applicants, they came out on top. So nice.
I think we were lucky because we were already too big because of the cutoff on the application. Anyway, whatever. It was cool.
Yeah,
it was good. It was a reflection of the employees for sure. It wasn't me.
It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, let's go to break.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone.